Greetings, all. So, I'm going to read this article from the Montreal Gazette from the Canadian Press, written allegedly by Siddhartha Banerjee, published March 30th, 2023. About a 3-minute read. The Court of Appeal of Quebec is seen Wednesday, March 27th, 2019, in Montreal. Photo by Ryan Remours, the Canadian Press. A proposed class action lawsuit over infamous brainwashing experiments at a Montreal psychiatric hospital was before Quebec's highest court Thursday, as victims attempted to remove immunity granted to the United States government. The U.S. government successfully argued in Quebec Superior Court last August that the country couldn't be sued for the project known as MKUltra. Allegedly, there's more to that. There's way more to just MKUltra. Allegedly funded by the Canadian government and the CIA, U.S. lawyers argued that foreign states had absolute immunity. They have immunity from lawsuits in Canada between the 1940s and 1960s when the program took place. But survivors and their families of the experiments at Montreal's Allen Memorial Institute, which included experimental drugs, rounds of electroshocks, and sleep deprivation, sound familiar, appealed that decision. Look into this project, you guys. I remember there was one young mother that had gone in for postpartum depression, because that happens to a lot of women. And they did what they call these psychic drivers. It's basically kind of like a prison torture technique to try to erase the mind. What do they call that? The tabula rasa, blank state, until she had nothing left and was literally incontinent, needing diapers and everything. It was really awful. On Thursday, a lawyer representing the United States government told the Quebec Court of Appeal that the country should be immune. Really? Remember, no jab, no job? From prosecution, and that any lawsuit against the U.S. government should be filed in that country. The court case stems from a class action lawsuit filed against McGill University, which was affiliated to the psychiatric hospital, Montreal's Royal Victoria Hospital, and Canadian and U.S. governments after Montrealers allegedly had their memories erased, just what I was talking about, and were reduced to childlike states. Yeah, they couldn't even use the bathroom naturally. They lost their bowels and everything. Class action lawyer Jeff Orenstein said Thursday he believes Canada's 1982 State Immunity Act, which outlines how foreign states can be sued in the country, is retroactive and can apply in this case. They just write the laws, by the way, and that's a whole long story. He said the 1982 Act allows foreign states to be sued in cases of bodily injury, but this took place in the 1950s and 60s. Orenstein told reporters regarding the psychological experiments, and so the exception had not been in effect during that period. You see? That's what they do. They find an out. The U.S. argued that the old law would prevail, and the old law was absolute immunity. They make the laws. What we're claiming is the law is retrospective, that you can look back even before the act was passed and apply it today. Orenstein said he noted there were also exemptions during the 1950s and 1960s for commercial activity lawsuits, adding that the Montreal experiments involved a funding arrangement between private parties, conveniently. Even under the old law, you would be able to pursue in Canadian courts, Orenstein said. He also said the case could be heard in Quebec. We don't think that Canadian citizens who are injured on Canadian soil are required to go to the United States to sue. The Court of Appeal will render a decision at a later date. The class action request, filed in January 2019, alleges that the Government of Canada funded psychiatric treatments by Dr. Ewan Cameron at the Allen Memorial Institute between 1948 and 1964 that were allegedly part of the Charlie Igloo Alpha's MK Ultra program of covert mind control. It has not been authorized yet by a judge. Julie Tanney, the lead plaintiff in the case, was among several dozen who protested Thursday outside the Court of Appeal building and attended the hearing. She said as many as 300 families could be affected by the class action, and many lives were left in disarray due to the experimental treatments. She said her father had been sent to the Allen in 1957 for facial pain. You see, the medical industrial complexes, what happens? And was put in Cameron's program, spending 2 30-day stints of chemically induced sleep in the hospital, allegedly with a tape recorder under his pillow. At the end of this time there, his medical records noted, "This is far as we can take him," Tanney said. You see what these devils do? Where they wanted him to go, I don't exactly know, but I do know, tabula rasa is where they wanted him to go, but I do know when visiting him, he was like a child in diapers, giggling like a 3-year-old. It's also very similar to satanic ritual abuse and torture methods that they've used in various prison programs. She said, adding he didn't recognize his own children. Most of his life vanished. He was never the same man he started off as, Tanney said. He died in 1992. She hopes for accountability at the end of the legal process and to shed light on a dark chapter for many families. It's sad to think about what could have been, Tanney said. It was a waste of a life for my father, terrible for my mother, and a giant loss and a void for the kids. Also, I'm going to sign off here, but I would suggest looking into these McGill University, Montreal, Quebec experiments, as well as Mengele Green, the twin experiments in Brazil. There's also quite a few, a word we're not allowed to use, but in the country, some call it the motherland, some call it the fatherland, Deutschland. There were a lot of experiments done against people against their will, which is typical. And also, there's a lot of experiments done on individuals in the military, as well as more so melanated people, to include the Tuskegee, and also various indigenous native tribes, especially really look into a lot of what happened in Canada and look into the Abel Danger. I'm trying to think here. Abel Danger and retired pilot Field McConnell disclosed the atrocities that happened at the pig farm in Canada, and also talked about the missing indigenous children that happened after Queenie Queen, the lizard, came to visit. Peace. Have a good day.